Hey everyone, it is now the final episode of the year, and what better way to wrap it up than to have a sit down talk with a friend of mine to discuss more about game development. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. You're joining me, your host, Max Pears, and I hope you are all playing and or making the games that you all love. And without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest for today, someone I've been chatting to for a while now, Mr. Adam. How are you doing, sir?
Hey Max, thanks for having me here, man. Feeling awesome today.
Worries. Brilliant. I'm glad to have you here. And as we spoke offline, the camera's not on, so you don't have to style your hair.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not like I have the best hair on the internet. Just FYI, you guys. But yeah, it's first time for me to record something that's without my face in it, which is pretty cool.
It's more relaxing, I find, without having to have your face on it, you know.
Yeah.
And then you've got to look at your face during editing a lot, which then makes you hate your face. So,
just a tad bit, yeah.
Yeah, just a smidge. You know, so no, man, it's great to have you here. And as I mentioned before, we've been chatting now for a while. Last week we shot an episode on your side, which we will put a link up in the description if this is out by the time this one comes out.
Yep, definitely.
Doing that one, but yeah, man, it's great to have you here, and it's been great to be chatting over these. I don't know, was it a month now we've been chatting for something crazy like that?
Yeah, about a month-ish. I think we got busy with. I think you had your game events, and I got my own holidays lined up as well. And then we finally got some free time to kind of sit down, relax, and have a chat. Talk about game design, game dev stuff. Yeah.
You made it sound so smooth, like smooth jazz was there, you know. So I appreciate that.
I try, mate.
All right. Well, you do, and it succeeds. It succeeds. So for those who don't know who you are, mate, do you mind giving a brief introduction about who you are?
All right. So I'm Adam, and I represent Pixel Mystique, which is my game development studio / content creation machine that I founded. So you'll find my presence primarily on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, and we've started to be more serious about it in this early 2019, although the channel has been up since 2015. When I first launched a trailer on one of my game projects. And over the channel, you'll find lots of tips, tricks, and tutorial content, also inspiration for game development. And other than that, before that, I'm also a game developer where I have experience in game design and also having experience as a producer. And along the way, part of being a game designer in a small indie studio, I also had to do a bit of level design as well.
Yeah, man, so you've been a man of all trades, a jack of all trades, if you will, then.
My father did warn me that it would be a blessing and a curse.
I like how in my head I've got your father sitting you down at 3 years old and being like, "Listen, you're going to be a jack of all trades."
Close. It is more like he warned me, like, you sure you want to be a jack of all trades? You know, you got to start figuring out your life at 5 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 is like, man, you need to start pulling your weight around here. You know?
Yeah, man.
Freeloader. No, man, so that's really cool. And as you said, like, it's been a very different path for you from most people. I think one of the things that I'd like to talk about the most is the fact of, you studied abroad, and also what the game industry is like in your country as well, mate.
Yep, for sure. So before I got into games, I was actually studying architecture.
Oh, really?
Yeah, back in college. And before that, for a very brief moment, I was studying medicine. Believe it.
Oh, wow.
Yep. My parents are both doctors, and they kind of inspired me to, study the craft, contribute to society in that particular manner in the healthcare line. And I thought, back then I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, where, especially coming from an Asian or Southeast Asian kind of cultural and background, we're more focused on the main industries like medical industries or medicine, lawyers or law, legal, engineering. Those are like the top three. And also, I might have to mention accounting as well. So if you're not in those top four-ish, there might be more, but usually it's the top three or top four. You're kind of weird back then. And now maybe it's a bit different thanks to the internet, and people are more aware of the other opportunities that not only the internet brings, but also the other jobs that we never heard of before, really. So it's from there that I start to go on this journey of trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to focus on? And it's only because the architecture program had this second part or twinning program where I have to choose to finish the rest of the program either locally or in one of the partner universities. And majority of us went to either the UK or Australia. So it's there. I went to RMIT in Melbourne. And
I'm going to say I'm only offended a little bit that you chose Australia over England. So it's okay.
I was hoping you didn't realize that.
Oh, I knew.
Yeah. So anyway, in Melbourne, Australia, I went to RMIT, and that's where I continued my game development. I continued my architectural journey. And interestingly enough, they had a very interesting program structure where if you study game development in uni, you would understand that there are game studios type of format where you come together as a team and you create a game, maybe during your first year, or maybe your final year, or something along those lines. So it is very similar in architecture, where you have studios as well, design studios. And it's usually where the lecturer will give you a theme to focus on, and then you gotta figure things out and solve problems along the way. And in my particular university, I got to choose which studios. There are multiple studios, and the lecturers will pitch based on what topic or particular design technique that they want to explore in that studio. And I chose the one that is exploring game engines. So there was one time they were using the older version of Unreal, and I think there was the one where I got into, they were using Second Life. So for the younger audience out there, if you don't know what Second Life is, it's okay, nobody does. It's basically like The Sims, but online in the early stages of 2000, I think. I can't recall the exact year. But you can basically own pieces of land, and you can have a basic avatar which you can customize further and create objects. So that's where we experimented and create our levels and our architectural, shelters and sculptures. And I got pretty good grades for those. And I got my hands into scripting as well for the first time ever, without any training whatsoever. And I was super pumped up. Like, I was usually quite, I was doing architecture kind of like half-heartedly at times. Even though I'm leaning more towards the creative side, but at the same time, I felt like I'm a jack of all trades, like you mentioned before. And there were parts of me that felt like I could do more in other subjects. And the scripting part really was one of them. The other one was the animation and particle systems. They have some native stuff going on in there, which I kind of, experimented with. But it's from there that the lecturer mentioned to me, like, you're pretty good with this game stuff. Maybe you should consider, talking to my colleague who is in charge of the games program. And it just so happened during that, a few hours before he said that, I was hanging out with one of my mates, and he was saying the same thing, like, "Oh yeah, I'm studying this games thing." And I was like, "What? You can study games in uni? Really? I never knew that. Why was I not informed about this? Why It was like, yeah, that was the same day. I heard about that from my lecturer and from my one of my friends, and that was a light bulb moment, and I made the switch.
Oh, okay. And how far along were you in university when you made the switch then, mate?
I think in totality it was 3 years college, 3 years and a half ish on college, and then another 3 years ish on university side for the degree.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So did you have to start from the very beginning of this course then, or what was the transferring process like?
So they were gracious enough to award me some credits. So it was kind of like, instead of doing like, I can't remember how many semesters, but I got 1 semester of transfer, basically. I get to cheat. Yep.
That's
And
cool. So it's great that they were so welcoming for you to come across, you know.
yeah, it is. So it's from there that I get a lot of really good mentorship and exposure. There were some veterans of the industry that had worked in EA and a few other companies that were doing part-time lecturing as well. Some of them were, transitioning to do full-time lecturing. And we learned, all around, like everything from... although I was more on the game design specific degree, my other colleagues would either choose to be more on the art side or the programming side. But overall, there's a lot of classes where it's kind of cut across and you all have to take it. There are compulsory subjects that, like basic of programming, everybody has to go through that. Basic of art, you know the drill. This is in today's era, it would be quite common to have a lot of universities that have the similar template. Back then, especially in certain countries, there are not that many schools who could teach that.
Yeah, I imagine so. And what do you find that the game industry is like in Australia then? Because there's some new studios have actually been announced to be opening up there. How did you find that?
So I was in a very interesting scenario. It's more like a very devastating scenario because it was around the era of the global financial crisis. I can't remember exactly which year.
It's like 2008, I believe.
Ish, yeah, around those kind of that time range, and that's a ripple effect where because the dollar in Australia became higher. I forgot what they did, but there was some repercussions because of the economy, and it became unattractive for a lot of studios to kind of invest on the local talent there. So one by one, the giant AAA studios had to shut down, and it was also the era of the iPhone, gaining more, prominence. The trend of slowly but surely, small indie studios cropping up. I believe Fruit Ninja developer Half-Brick was there, and they're still there, I think. And a few other guys in the early days, they were still pioneering back then, and they made it to the charts.
Yes.
But that also means that more competition for anyone looking for jobs, especially if you have next to zero professional experience.
Yes.
Internships as well. It's very hard to come by, and unfortunately, after quite a while of searching, I've decided that I have to go back home, back to Malaysia. And I think that's it was a sad moment, but I see it as a way of I see it as some blessing in disguise, in the sense that I managed to at least get some quality education related to game development, something that I'm passionate about, before having to choose another job.
I was gonna say, so we'll flash forward a few years then, mate, so that you've come back to Malaysia, and then you've started and you say you've started to take it a bit more serious this year. But
Yep.
what's it been like, I guess, to be making videos in Malaysia, and how have you found creating your channel, mate? Like, how have you found it? Teaching and helping your community.
Yeah, it's been awesome. There's a story behind that as well, where I didn't get to where I am today professionally only in doing video games. Basically, I had to try out other industries,
Right. Okay.
non-game development industries. So in that regards, I do believe that I'm a bit of unique. I have a bit of a unique perspective about how things work. In the first job, for example, was related to game development, but I was recruited to join this broadcasting company. It was a giant broadcasting company, and they wanted to figure out how to play around with games because just like any other giant corporate, they read all the business reports and how games is on the rise. The rise of mobile is helping pushing that to more consumers. So they have a lot of their own IPs on the TV side that they wanted to push to games, and they were trying to figure out how. So I was recruited to kind of be that guy who kind of figured things out, and that kind of gave me exposure to how different opportunities are there in other industries, but you're still related to doing games. Although it was a business role. So here's the interesting part. I got my first taste about business development doing this job. And it's a really crazy transition. For those of you who, especially those of you, like I think you can relate to this, if you're more towards the creative side, if you're a designer, you're an artist, being tossed into doing business is really awkward. I mean, I was used to having slides and presentations where it's just one picture and maybe a few keywords there, and the rest is just me talking. Not for these guys. They're like, where's your stats? Where's your numbers? Where's your graphs? Where's your, this and that? It's a very different world. But that gave me perspective of the other opportunities that are out there. And then it's also during that time that I actually did quite a few videos on the side. And even before I was job hunting, while waiting to get a game development job, I was also doing a bit of video editing and video production. Because apart from learning game development, I took a few elective subjects on video production and VFX. Because I figured that it would have some correlation to game development in some way. And it's true, like especially VFX, some of the tricks that they use are very similar to game development. And it's from there that, just to kind of relate back to your question about my YouTube channel, one of the reasons I felt so confident to start pumping content there was because of that video production kind of experience.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was doing a lot of marketing materials for my student association back then, student body, student organization, promoting their events. And along the way, I was doing some freelance work for some of my friends who were, getting married. So I did some wedding videos. Nothing too professional, but it's serious enough that I was able to hone some techniques and some processes to be more efficient. And if you check out Pixel Mystique's YouTube channel right now, you can see the quality is there because I have had the exposure before.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a good thing that you've taken all these opportunities.
Yeah, I'm tying both.
Combine them.
Correct. Combining both video editing and game development knowledge into one. And to answer your question about my my feeling of teaching and sharing my knowledge on game development, it wasn't the case before this. I started off doing more on the devlog side of things. So I have my own IP that I wanted to build up. I wanted to raise funds and develop my own game. Along the way, I decided, you know what, I gotta start doing some marketing. So let's build up the brand by making videos. And back then, I did not study about how people discover content. I did not study about, how do people do proper marketing, like the science behind it, the art behind it. Or maybe the art part I kind of, know a little bit here and there, but not the science behind it. So it was only after I've failed to do fundraising that I've decided, I should pivot. So to those of you who are not familiar with the term, pivoting in business means that you kind of still have the same mission and you still potentially stay within the same zone or the same area of expertise or product line, but you kind of change your method of getting to your ultimate goal. So in my case, I still stayed within games, but I decided to use video as a method of potentially reaching out to a bigger audience to contribute my knowledge and my experience and build up the community. At the same time, finding ways to find other opportunities that could lead to me being able to fund my own game project sometime in the future.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
And how did that, you said you building up your brand, you studied more about marketing. Did you find that helped you to build up your channel then?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like an easy example is when you think about marketing an online brand, we all make this mistake of, especially as artists or creative people, we want to express our message. We want to express what we're doing, right? Which isn't entirely wrong, but the first step you should take is to realize that nobody knows who you are in the very beginning. Like, even if you are, unless of course, you work in, a particular type of game studio, maybe if you have a certain ranking where you get to show your face more often in the media, maybe. But most of us, nobody knows who we are. And especially if you are using a different brand that is not directly related to your name, nobody knows you. So when I discovered that fact, I decided to dive deeper into strategies around content marketing. And I actually studied those and go through like certain YouTube channels. I binge watch a lot of those content about tips and tricks and strategies around YouTube. I also enrolled to certain courses and attend certain webinars. And then I discovered that I was doing things the wrong way. I should empathize more with my audience. And the secret is to create helpful content first before showing people what you're doing with your pet project or your side project or something that just, mostly benefits you. So that's when the slight pivot, another slight pivot of the strategy begins, where I started to pump out more tutorial content and tips and tricks kind of content. The first video after that was this video I made about the best Udemy courses you should check out if you're just starting out to learn Unity. And that video, until today, is my highest performing video. It outshines even my level design videos, cannot catch up to it. Maybe in the future that will change, but for the time being, it's still the number one. So that was interesting because that means that, it really does work when you try to create something that people are looking for and does not directly in the beginning associate to your brand, but because they were looking for the right titles, the right keywords that you put into your videos. For example, it could be how to become a level designer. In your case, if you were to use those kind of titles, they will be able to find you a lot easier via Google search. And Google, if for those people who don't know, Google, they own YouTube as well, and YouTube has search bar as well, which has its own algorithm as well. And people would now be more familiar with either going straight to YouTube to search for something, or they search via Google, and then one of the results would be a YouTube video. So when you start positioning your strategy and be more serious about it from that angle, then you start to plan your content a bit more in a more different manner, right? And that's how I started to go down this path and rethinking my entire strategy and rethinking how I'm going to experiment with different types of content.
I see. And with this experimentation then, mate, did you find... I don't want you to give all your secrets away, but did you find that some of these were more successful than others through your experimentation?
Oh, no worries. It's no secret because you can see how many views I'm getting. But of course, there's a lot of... if I remember correctly, like I mentioned, the top courses video, the one where I review courses and I recommend which ones are the best, in my opinion, and that's performing well. The other one would be, because I had experience being a producer and also being diving into project management in my other careers, I did a Trello course. That's not on YouTube. The course itself is hosted on Udemy. But I decided to make a few videos around Trello and tutorials around Trello and how to use Trello as part of a indie team versus an individual. So I'm trying to empathize with my audience. Not everyone's in a team. Some people are in a small team, fine, but others are, individuals doing their own side projects, or maybe they are doing, they're being a solo entrepreneur or a solo developer. And that's also performing quite well because not many people are talking about it from a game development perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's quite universal as well, which is one of the reasons why I chose to make my course on Udemy around project management, because I was trying to experiment as well to see whether or not I could be more practical and attract audiences from non-game development side of things.
Okay. That's an interesting one.
This is one of those things where, my experience and exposure towards business development kind of helped, because not that many game developers would have that kind of mindset to kind of think about, okay, money is great and money can be, used for good and bad, and there are different ways you can make money. What are the ways that I can utilize to get money, and which ones will work best in which situation? And you won't know until you try.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very, very true. There's so many things to experiment with. We're approaching the end of the episode now. But before we do that, is there anything you want to say about your channel? Because obviously we're going to have a link to Adam's channel down below, so you can get there instantly to it. But is there anything you want to say to the people about the channel, mate? Because I know you do good stuff, but sell it to us, my friend.
All right. So as I mentioned, there's a bunch of videos around tutorial tips and inspirational content, all focusing on game development. And you can find me at Pixel Mystique. Just search for it. All my videos are tagged with the word Pixel Mystique. I'll be focusing on level design content as well. Just like drawing my experience using level design techniques in Unity specifically. So maybe once in a while I'll also show off a little bit of the generic tips and tricks regarding level design. So there's also plans where I might dive into creating maybe interview style format, which is what we're kind of doing right now, and is going to be on a podcast, which I have not set up. But for those of you who, you're trying to multitask, you're going to work or you're coming back from work, and then you want to dive into some tips and tricks and interviews from some of the best in the industry, including our own Max Pears here, you should check out the podcast when it's out. But for now, do catch us on Pixel Mystique's YouTube channel, and all links will be included in the description.
And you got a great video on God of War as well, which I think was great. And I cannot recommend checking out his channel enough. As I said, there'll be links to it, and he will be releasing our other talk as we break down some level design, and we get to discuss that when he releases his episode as well, which will be great
Oh
fun.
yes, I do look forward to that one, where I interview Max Pears right here and giving him some of the toughest questions on earth, to help out aspiring game developers and level designers to get a job, and especially those who want to learn more from someone who has enough experience being a professional level designer. So, don't miss that episode as well, because the tables have turned, and I'm the one asking the questions.
That they have. All right then, mate. Well, for those who want to reach you, you've obviously got your YouTube, but where can they get in contact with you? Because you've got your Discord, and what else do you have, mate?
Right, apart from my Discord server, there's also my Twitter and Instagram. Again, very easy to look for them. They're all in my profile, in my bio on YouTube, my Discord as well. And they are named after Pixel Mystique, so very easy for you to search, and you can find me. Usually what I do is I will promote or maybe give snippets of my upcoming content before they are released, and I may or may not release longer form content on IGTV as well, if that's what you are into. So do check out Pixel Mystique on Instagram and Twitter.
For sure. No, it's great. And if you want to reach out to me, and also do join his Discord server. I'm on there as well. Some great people and a great community as well, which we can never get enough of, in my opinion. The more, the better. And if you want to reach out to me, you can do so on Twitter, which is @MaxPez. If you do want to email into the show, you can do so at leveldesignlobby@gmail.com. And if you do want to support the podcast, then please do head over to patreon.com/leveldesignlobby. And thank you, Adam, for joining, and we will catch you all next time.